Okay, so we'll move on to the first session, and that is Laura Powell from 3D Reid Architects.
Hello, right, let's see if we can do this. Share screen, yes, that one, and then it's always so much easier when you practice these things. Right, there we go. Right, hi, welcome everybody. I feel rather privileged to be presenting the first ever online presentation for Dynamo Northwest. This slide is thanks to Brendan, who's doing a presentation later. It's our first ever online event. I'm only going to be talking about one of these types of Dynamo today. That's me at the bottom left at a really bad photo at Dynamo Kiev Stadium this time last year. So my webcam's broken, which is why I'm not on video. So a bit about me, that's me working from home. I'm an architect, but I'm currently full-time BIM for 3D Reid in Manchester. And I started using Revit just over a decade ago. And I discovered Dynamo about 3 years ago when a friend I worked with said, hey, look at this. Hi, Mark, I know you're watching. I'm also on the committee of MRUG. Moving on to Dynamo, I'm assuming you guys already know this, but just in case you do, that's Dynamo. It can automate things Revit can't do out of the box. It can do things like make Excel and Revit talk to each other. And it's also got a player option, so all your users don't have to look at the scary scripts. It's been around for a while now. And if you notice that after 2020, it actually includes regular updates. It's a part of Revit. Unfortunately for me, I'm still on Revit 19, and all the things I'll be showing you tonight are in version 2.0.3. So that's Revit 19, Dynamo 2.0.3. So when we open Dynamo, we're faced with this screen. Actually, there are quite a lot of useful things on here that a lot of people overlook. So I'm just going to very quickly talk you through those. At the top, we've got pull-down menus, like you do on a lot of programs. In the blue square, you've got your normal files. And in the red squiggle, that's the recent things that you've had open. Moving on to the right, there are more interesting stuff on here. In the blue square, there's some interesting links. In the red squiggle, getting started, it's a 9-page basic overview of Dynamo. Dynamo Primer is it's a link to dynamobim.org. It's a really, really fantastic resource. It's got loads of pages with concepts and examples, and there are dozens of files for you to download and use and look at. Video tutorials, again, that's another link to dynamobim.org, and there's some great videos to watch, and I recommend anybody wanting to learn has a look at those. And you can download them and watch them, it's brilliant. And then we've got Dynamo Dictionary. That's another open source link. The really good thing about all of this is it's open source, so it's all free. And Dynamo Dictionary explains what the standard built-in nodes do. Now, at the bottom of the page, I couldn't quite fit it on the last slide, so we've got another slide. In the blue, we've got GitHub, which is a community of programmers. It's basically online nerds who will help you with anything program related whatsoever. You'll be pleased to hear that Dynamo has got its own section on GitHub. And then finally, we've got samples. These are absolutely invaluable when you're trying to learn. They give you some basic working scripts, and you also get a sample Revit model to play with. I'm briefly going to show you one of these in a bit. So before I go on to examples, I really want to state how much amazing free material there is online now. It's really expanded in the last year or two. The top two are as if you don't know anything about Dynamo, you need to be convinced still, or you need to convince somebody else why Dynamo. Autodesk University, I think everybody should know what that is, but they put their stuff online from their events, so that's a really good resource. The primer, the two that I've just mentioned, the one ending 161 are the videos, the dictionary I've just mentioned, and then GitHub there at the bottom. Okay, so top tip. If you're a beginner, before you ever open anything, make sure that button is ticked. Remember that, don't forget. Okay, so I've opened a blank Dynamo screen here, and you'll be presented with a totally blank canvas. So I'm just going to quickly talk. Oh, at the top you can see it says generative design 4 times. That's because when you're loading Project Refinery, it doesn't tell you it's loaded. So the person installing it on my computer clicked it 4 times, so just ignore that. So at the top, we've got the pull-down menus again, that's standard. Then on the left, we've got the search box where you can type in for something you're looking for. Then we have the standard node library in the red squiggle. And at the bottom, any packages you've loaded will appear here, and it'll be a scroll list. At the bottom, again, notice it's in manual mode. It is important if you're a beginner, because if it's in automatic, your script can run automatically, will run automatically. And some of the Dynamo scripts do things like writing to Excel, deleting things in Revit, writing things to Revit. So if you don't know what script is, or if you're a beginner, make sure that's always in manual. Okay, so this is what a Dynamo script looks like. This is one I was working on a while ago. It's not quite finished, so it's still a mess. Some of them look quite scary. Some of them are lots of nodes. Some of them are only a few nodes. They can look overwhelming, but once you start to understand what they do, it's a bit less scary. So Dynamo works by reading nodes. Each node, it's a set of instructions and a function basically for Dynamo to follow. The nodes are linked together with a wire, and it knows to take input from one node into the next node. So this is a fantastic graphic, which I've pinched from arcsmarter.com because it tells you everything really. Okay, so I didn't know Kevin was going to do a quiz. Quiz is the wrong word, questionnaire. So I'll do this very quickly. There are a lot of the same questions, I'm afraid. So if everybody just use their smartphone, PC, whatever, and if you can log into live.voxvote.com, and the pin there is 70217. Right, let's see if we can get this to work. Okay, right, I'm going to have to swap screens now because I'm actually got a remote desktop. Right, let's see if we can get this to work. Okay, I think that worked. Somebody shout at me if it didn't. Okay, is this working?
Yeah, that works fine, Laura.
It is working, awesome. So it says 26 users voted. It's meant to automatically update, but it doesn't appear to be doing. Oh, of course, brilliant. Everything's live, it doesn't work.
Currently says waiting for new question on mine.
Oh, here we go. I've got to press the start button. Sorry. Oh dear. Yes, thank you, people telling me to press the start button. Okay, is this working now? Oh, it says it's on now. Okay, we've got 49. Oh, blimey. Okay, I'm going to move on because this one doesn't seem to want to work. Okay. I'll have to share the results with you later. Last time I did this, it updated automatically and it was kind of good fun.
Click on start, Laura.
I told you this is a horrible one. I should have just stuck to the Dynamo. Did that start? Yeah. Okay, I have no idea why it's not displaying. If anybody does know, please tell me.
Somebody's saying click on the eye icon.
That one. Oh, thank you. Awesome. There we go. Okay, we've got mainly architects and quite a lot of BIM people. Okay. Right. Whoa, that was quick. So only 27 of you. Oh my goodness. Nobody's so good that they know Python or C. I don't believe it. Oh, there we go. We've got a few of you. There we go. Let's move to the next one. Hey, I'm getting the hang of this now. Did I press start? Yes, I did. There we go. Ooh, rest of world. If you write in the chat where you're from, I saw somebody was from, I think it was Arizona earlier. It'd be interesting to see where everybody's from. Okay, right, there's only a couple more. Well, the people who want to go to more, just keep noticing, keep looking at our website. We're always like to see new faces. Okay, so this is the important one. Are you aware the committee are all volunteers and we don't get paid for this? We all do this for fun. Oh, most of you know this. I must have mentioned this several times. You know what's coming next. Did I press start? Oh, it starts, oh, the whole thing starts, doesn't it? Oh, here we go. Okay, we've got 17.9% of 28 saying that they can do a presentation at the next time. That's 6 people roughly, isn't it? And look at all those people who say they can do MRUP. Right, that's fantastic. Right, enough fun. I'm going to go back to the presentation now. I'm just having some water. Right, let's see if we can go back to this. Right, share screen. Yes. Okay. Ah, and it already goes back to that. How good's that? Okay, thanks for that, guys. So I'm moving on to some actual examples now. Now, do you remember I mentioned the samples a minute ago? I'm going to briefly run through one. It's this one here that's seconds to bottom. Actually, let's move that over there. There we go. So all of the Dynamo graphs come with basic instructions, and you can see there's quite a bit of text on here. Now, notice, despite what I may have said a couple of times already, this graph's actually set to run on automatic. All of the sample files should be fine to run in automatic. Now, I've pre-recorded this video, so I hope there's not too much lag, and I'm going to try and talk over the top of it because I am really bad at multitasking. Right, so if we zoom into the top left, we can see that there's a sample Revit file to use alongside this script. And there's the address. And I'm going to shrink the Dynamo window so we can see what's happening in Revit as well. I've already got the sample file open. Now notice there's 27 photovoltaic panels sitting on the grass there in our sample Revit file. And we can see it says photovoltaic there. So we can guess that the family type node, it must control the family type. And this is a really good way of learning how to do things. Just play with the scripts and see what they do. So here, if I click trees, yes, it turns to trees. So then we can work out what this particular node does. I'm going to go with this woman, and let's start playing with some of the other nodes. Now, point by coordinates seems self-explanatory, but what about the stuff feeding into the X and Y? Well, because it's XY coordinates, we can guess that -10 to 10 are the coordinates, but we can play about and see. And if we put that to 0, yep, half of them vanish. So we can work out that is what's controlling that. So step 2.5, I mean, I would guess it's spacing. So if we change it, sure enough, she gets closer together. So we've worked that one out as well. Gonna put it back to 2.5 because of the social distancing measures. And then let's have a look at the Y. So obviously -10, -15, we can easily work out that's the coordinates. And we could guess again that maybe #3 means spacing. So if we actually change and then look and see what's happening, we can see that it isn't actually spacing, it's how many of them there are. Again, I don't want to catch a plague, so I'm putting her back to 3. Right, now, see these X's here? That's something called lacing, and basically it's the information that's going into the node, how it works. The 3 X's means cross product, and it means every X point is matched with every Y point, which is what gives you a grid of those women. Now you see they're in groups at the moment as opposed to a big long list. Now this one puts them into a list, so each point is just an X, Y, Z coordinate as opposed to a group. Now levels, that one's obvious. It shows every level in the model. I'm not going to move it, but I could just by clicking on that if I wanted to. And this node here is the one that's creating the families from the information that's been put into it. Okay, so let's have a look at the rest of the script so we can sort of work out what's going on. So element set parameter by name, it's a mouthful. You'll notice that marks going in here. Any of you that are familiar with Revit will recognize what mark is. It's not my friend I mentioned earlier. It's the individual code for each item. So if we click on one of the women, we can see that her mark's 17. The other one I think was 4. So we can start to work out what do we do if we play with this? What happens if we change it to comments, for example? You can see that the comment for her has gone to 17. And if we click on another one, that one's number 4. Now, obviously, you'd not normally put a number in for your comments, but I just did that to sort of demonstrate what it does. Now, if I try and scroll back a little bit in this video, here, we can see that the value are coming from these nodes that are feeding into the thing. I suggest, again, if you're a beginner, try experimenting with these things, try putting different nodes into the value so you can maybe get something more useful than numbers in your comments. All right, okay, before I move on to another script, I want to talk about Monocle. You can download packages and each package will contain lots of different nodes. I really like this package because it is useful, but it's also silly. So this meme, I never know if it's doggy or doge, but it makes me smile. It also tells you what packages you've got in use. The later versions of Dynamo, after I think it's Revit 2020, actually have this installed, but previous to there, you don't. This also does other useful things, like you can have post-it notes as well, which I really like. So here we have a basic script. I've pinched this one from one of the resources that I mentioned earlier, but I've just modified it very slightly. Now, on the left, we've got input nodes. In the middle, we've got some calculation nodes, which I've called action because that sounds more exciting. On the right, we've got output. So this is quite a basic explanation of how Dynamo works. So on the far right of the screen, you can see a really, really basic Revit model. We've got 2 levels and a floor. Now, looking back at the Dynamo script, you can see on the levels node, I've selected 0, 1. The drop down would show you the other level as well, but I've minimized the number of videos in this presentation because I was really worried about presenting online and lag, so I'm afraid there's just a slideshow, apart from the one of the videos I've just showed you. Okay, so then below, the distance between the levels, I've put in 4 meters, and I've said that I want 3 levels. So if you notice on the right, there's a watch node. These things are really, really useful, and I suggest when you're learning and like looking at scripts, you use these all over the place because it will show you what's going on once I've run the script. There are different types of watch nodes. There's a basic one, a 3D one, and there's an image one as well. So I pressed the run button, and this is what happened. You can see 3 levels have been added above level 1, and each one of them is 4 meters apart. Now, if you look at the watch node, it shows you the level name, the elevation, and also it shows you the element ID if you scroll right. If anybody's eagle-eyed wondering why it's 33, it's because I actually ran several tests before doing this and didn't reset it, so ignore that. So as with most things in Dynamo and Revit, you can do them several different ways. Now this is a GIF. So if I double click, I get a code block. These things are brilliant. You can use them for numbers and strings and formula as well. So I just typed in 3, clicked outside, plugged it in. That will work exactly the same way as the number node that's already there. Or I can type in integer slider up there. Again, I can slide that to whatever number I want, plug that in instead, and that will work in exactly the same way. So it's really good when you're learning these things to see different ways of doing things. Okay, so here's a bit more added to the script. Now, output 1 on the left is exactly the same code as I've just shown you, and all the same nodes feeding into it. So it does up to output 1 is exactly what you've seen already. So with a previous script, we only added levels, which is great, but normally I'd like floor plan views as well. And I would like to copy my floor to every new level. So the select model element node there at the moment says nothing selected. You work it by clicking on select, and then you click on an item in the Revit model. And there you can go. In this instance, I've selected the floor. I just need some water. Okay. So once I've run that, this is what happens. Output number 3 is copying the floor to all the new levels. If you notice the data stream, what that is it's telling Dynamo to wait for the things that have happened already before doing output 3. The reason is because obviously Dynamo can't create floors on levels that don't exist, so it has to wait for the levels to exist, and then it produces the floors. That's quite a useful node for a lot of things. Okay, so I hope you've been paying attention. There is homework. Instead of copying the floor to the new levels only, how would you copy the floor to all the other levels without duplicating it on level 0? I hope that makes sense. So in the script I showed you, it duplicated it to all the levels apart from the level 1 which already existed. But how would you get it to duplicate on every level apart from level 0? Okay, so I did it with 7 extra nodes, including those 3. I did use one of those at least twice. It would be interesting if people can work out how to do it. And then, oh, it's not clicking up to my next one. Hang on, there we go. So here's some tips. Write down what you think the steps are. Use the resources I've talked about. Google, obviously, that's a great one. And then when you've done it, take a screenshot of your graph and email the MRUG committee. I'm going to put that at the end of the presentation. So hopefully we'll have a very quick discussion about this at the next meeting. So that's probably a very easy thing to get you all started if you've not used Dynamo before or you are a total beginner. So happy Dynamoing. And I mentioned a moose earlier to anybody who was logged in. Dynamo can do all sorts of exciting things. Now, somebody has written a moose node. It's open source, so you can go and download this moose node and it will create a Dynamo moose for you. All right, and you can email us, there we go, on committee@mrug.co.uk. Right, thank you very much, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully the rest of the committee will turn their sound back on now.
Hello.
Hello. I was worried I was going to talk to myself then.
No, outstanding presentation, Laura. Well done.
Thanks. Oh, we have some people in the
There's some questions, I think. Oh, hang on a minute. There's so many questions. Can't keep up with them. Are you going to ask them, Kevin, or shall I ask them? Oh, he's gone. He's muted himself. He doesn't.
Yeah, you can take the questions if you like, Rob.
Okay. So, any questions that you want to ask, put them through into the webinar chat.
There was one from Glenn Tate who said, "Are weight nodes best practice? Are they essential?"
They some scripts won't work without them at all. And I mean, I wouldn't actually know how to make the floors until the levels are created. I don't think that's possible. And also there's if you're writing to Excel, there's if you use a package called Bumblebee, there's some nodes in there that definitely need to wait for some things to write until they write, because otherwise they clash with each other. I don't know if anybody agrees or disagrees with me, but I find them essential.
Kieran's just written in the chat. He's just written Clockworks pass-through, Laura. I don't know if he's if that's a tip or if that's just a general comment.
I think it's just an alternative to using the pass-through node in Orchid.
Is that an alternative to the wait node?
Same kind of idea. It waits for an operation to complete before it carries on. They can be very, very useful, certainly.
I mean, it's the same with anything in Dynamo. There's more than one way to skin an avocado. I'm saying that because I'm a vegetarian and I can't skin cats.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, I like avocado as well.
Okay, so another valid question for Dynamo is why would you not use the inbuilt Revit tools for copy and paste for levels? Surely this will be faster.
Oh, because obviously in my example, there were only 3 levels, so that's really easy. But let's say you're doing 50 stories, then it can take a lot longer. I mean, some things, yes, you're quite right. It's better and more sensible to do it in Revit. And I think people do often sort of get a bit carried away with Dynamo. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. But for a lot of automation, repetitive tasks, if you're doing 3 floors, then yeah, it's silly. But if you're doing 50, not so silly.
Okay, if there's no more questions, thank you, Laura. That was great. I think it's really essential for these kind of events to have a real mixed bag of presentations, and in terms of different levels of Dynamo entry, and I think this certainly hits the spot with the number of attendants that we have today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if we can get some screen grabs of people doing that for next time, because we often don't get enough user participation, really. It's often us doing the talking. It'd be really nice to get some people joining in who wouldn't normally.
Absolutely, yeah. I think audience participation is very much welcomed.